Good evening. My name is Rob Burroughs, and I am going to be your host this evening. I'm a Navy veteran, 2 combat tours in Iraq. And this evening, as we prepare to start, our discussions will be about the American Veteran video series. And so I'd like to go ahead right now and introduce our panel that'll be talking with us tonight and helping you to answer some of the questions that you might have this evening. Our first one we'd like to introduce is James Kanofsky. And James is the Shasta College Veteran Service Officer. Good evening, James.
Good evening, Rob and everyone else. Yes, James Konopitsky, and I served in the United States Air Force. And I served under the OEF, OIF, and OND operations, which was from the years 2007 to 2011 I served.
The next individual we'd like to refer to is Celestine Trevor. She is the Shasta County Veteran Service Officer, and she is our only female to this evening that's going to be on our panel. So if you have any questions for the ladies, she is here to help set those because she is a female Army veteran. And so Celestina, thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Rob, and good evening, everyone. And I was U.S. Army veteran. I am an Army veteran, but I use Army. I was military police, and I served from 1987 to 1990, and then through 95.
Thank you very much. Our next guest, that speaker, part of our program, is Andrew Tuggle, Simpson University Veteran Service Officer. Good evening, Andrew.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Andrew Tuggle. I'm a U.S. Army intelligence analyst from 2012 to 2017, working with the Joint Special Operations Task Force as a target analyst.
Our next guest that's part of our program is Troy Davenport. And Troy and Daniel Torres are from Butte College, and they're the Veteran Service Officer programs there. Good evening.
Yes, thank you, Rob. My name is Troy Davenport. I was in the U.S. Army 10th Mountain Division. I served from 2002 to 2005. I was in Afghanistan from 2003 to 2004.
Thank you, Troy. And Dan?
Thanks, Rob. Hi, my name is Dan Torres. I served in the U.S. Navy for 6 years. I was stationed in San Diego, did one Westpac on the USS Nimitz.
Well, thank you again for our panelists that'll be here this evening. And if you're listening and you're on the other line, we're going to go ahead and get started here with the program. I want to read a disclaimer. There are trigger warnings in some of these videos if you have not seen them. And the reason we're here today is to make sure that we can work with you in our community as fellow veterans to answer some of the questions and to work with you, maybe to be able to direct you in a path you hadn't thought of yet for some of your service capabilities or even for maybe some personal PTSD or whatever. We're in good company here. We're all veterans. If you're a civilian and you're texting or coming on in, please let us know so that we can answer our questions for you accordingly. And when you speak in, when you call in, let us know your full name or your first name and the branch of service that you served in, and if you'd like to, also the time frame. And that way, that'll give us a little bit better information understanding as how to answer the question and to be able to know which individual or veteran will probably be able to answer your questions first. As we get ready to start, we're going to go ahead and with the introduction of the first video. All veterans had a starting point, and each individual embarked on the starting point together, but not all have the same obstacles. This video and section will discuss what it took to overcome the odds in basic training and what it took to plant yourself into your branch of service.
It is dangerous. I can't believe the things that we did, the things that we were commanded to do, the times that we marched around in the rain and the mud, heavy equipment, firing live rounds. I mean, they push you to the edge.
Growing up, my swimming abilities were not very strong. But in the Coast Guard, during boot camp, and then rescue swimmer school, you're constantly in the water or doing things you're not used to doing, like treading water with a brick over your head, or controlling your breathing, or learning how to stay calm when people are freaking out and pulling you underwater. Yeah, there were moments I decided this maybe not be for me. We did something called the D5 dunker. if your aircraft should happen to hit the water and you're strapped in, you've got to be able to get out. My first time, I was blindfolded, strapped into the farthest end of it. I was really nervous, but I sat there for a second, pictured where I was able to egress out. I was underwater for about 2 minutes. I popped to the surface and everybody's already out of the pool. And the instructor was yelling at me, what was I doing? I said I got lost, so I started over again. I didn't have any fear of the water at that point in time anymore.
You're in training, you're rocking, you're doing push-ups, you're going through obstacle courses, all different kinds of stuff. And then one day we had an air assault down this big, huge tower. Before basic training, I had a fear of heights. Well, you had to get over that. So there was no going back. I mean, they're telling you, go, get over that thing. So everybody else was doing it. They didn't die. So I guess you just go. That is definitely empowering, just to feel like you can conquer those fears. And if you can do that, you can keep on going.
I wasn't as physically strong as the others. We would do a run, and they never tell you how long the run is, and I would never make the end of the run. I would stop thinking I was going to die. I couldn't take another step. And then the platoon would halt maybe 50 yards after that. So I was close, but I never made it. I knew I was failing out. And about halfway through, I decided that I needed to make a stronger commitment. Those around me were getting notes under their pillows. Haven't you quit yet? Don't you know that you don't have the makings of being an officer? Why are you still here? And then people would just be gone. So I decided that on the next run, I am going to run until I die. And when I finished that run, I knew it wasn't the physical part, it was the mental toughness.
There it goes. Trying to work all these buttons as we move forward. We just finished watching the first clip for American Veteran. Video 1 is basic training, overcoming the odds. And so we'd like to go ahead and present our first question. The first question is, what feelings and thoughts did you experience on your first couple of days of basic training? And so if you are listening and you are a participant, we'd like you to go ahead and type in your question that you might have. And then if we don't get one of those, then we'll go ahead and talk a little bit among our own veterans on the panel to share some of their experience through boot camp to kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at and to let you know that we share the same experiences that you may have.
Yeah, Rob. So I'll go ahead and chime in here. I think my first couple days at boot camp for the Army, you know, it's a whole different ball game when we're talking 2010, 2020. I was there in 2012, and you know, when you first get there, you kind of look around, size everybody up, see kind of what pack you want to run with. You know, luckily I was able to go there with a couple people that I knew. So my initial bunkmate was somebody that I knew, had a birthday, you know, one day before me. We just got a chance to kind of get to know each other and kind of build a brotherly bond on our first couple days. And you know, it's just picking your buddy up by their bootstraps. Every time something happened, you always had somebody there, and you kind of build your relationships from there. And that was kind of my first introduction was, hey, we're in it now. This is it. Guess what? We're doing push-ups till we die for the next 2 days. And tell you what, I'm going to pick up the back of your shirt and I'm going to push you down to the floor. I'm going to make sure we're getting through this. And, you know, it just kind of built this brotherhood as we're all sitting in the bays doing push-ups until 10 o'clock at night because, you know, somebody, as the drill sergeant said, blue doo-doo dust all over the barracks. And, you know, it was just, hey, we're doing push-ups and this is it. This is your life now. And, you know, that was kind of my introduction, and getting through it was just looking left and right. We're all going through the suck, and here it is. So carry on, and we'll keep doing it till your arms are bigger.
You know, I can relate to that. Doing 23 years in the Navy Seabees, we never stopped doing push-ups. It was a regular regimen. It happened all the time. And after a while, it was second nature. It was like eating breakfast because it just was a part of life.
No kidding.
Anyone else?
It was my first time of learning how to work with a team, a big team. When one of us failed, we all were doing push-ups in the mud and out in the rain, or so we knew right away that we had to watch each other's backs, and we also had to help the weakest link so we could work together. I know that when I was in an all-female platoon, and when at boot camp, we always had to beat all the other males. If we were going to the range and we were going to the range and other males were going to be there, we always had to run and beat them. We always had to be first. And that was really interesting concept for me, because that's when I realized that we as women, we have to prove ourselves and to be part of that team. And that was the first thing that was drilled into our heads back when I was in, is you're not going to be sought as an equal, that you have to work harder and you have to be better than the rest.
One of the things that I kind of look at it as is, if you ever watched the program Survivor, you have all these people who don't know each other. They all come together, and at first they're trying to work with each other and everything else. And then literally they split up and start stabbing each other in the back. In the military, that's not how it works in boot camp. Everybody doesn't know each other. Everybody comes together. Everybody's forced into the same crucible. And then you're spit out toward the very end as you come together as a team, and you're supporting each other through that entire time frame. It's not like you're an individual and you're going to vote somebody out. You're an individual there, and you're bringing the next person in as close as you can, because they're going to help you get through, and you're going to likewise help them get through. We're going to move on to the next question. What were some of the odds or obstacles that you or your unit had to overcome while you were in boot camp?
I think for me, it was the change in mindset, right? You're not used to having someone in your face yell at you, just get in your face and tell you what to do without you reacting, right? Wanting to punch this person for doing what he's doing to you. And you can't, right? You can't react. And you realize they're breaking you down mentally, right? They're trying to see how much you can take. Are you going to snap? How are you going to react to this? And we slowly realized that was the key, right? It wasn't all physical. It's more mental. And that's what we overcame as a group. We just stuck together and try to help each other out, right? I mean, attention to detail is one of the things they teach you, right? I was in the Navy, and we always said, don't go forge ahead writing your initials on your underwear, because you're going to do it wrong. So we'd always correct each other and try to help each other out, because we knew if you got in trouble, we got in trouble too.
Right.
So that was one of the things that I remember.
I have to agree with you, Dan, on the mental aspect was a big part to overcome. As a unit itself, going into basic training, thinking, hey, I'm going to do this for my country, I'm going to do this, and it was I. But when getting into basic training, it was a team effort. When we had our barracks tossed, everybody was in there sorting through stuff and trying to figure out whose stuff was whose. When somebody would mess up and do some mistake, they were brought to the front of the platoon while everybody else had to do the workout or suffer for it. So really understanding how to build each other up to get through this as a team, it was more about learning your mental limitations as well as your physical limitations.
I think one of the other items is that many times you're standing inspection, you're doing the best. I mean, you're tip-top shape because you're working with your uniforms, and no matter what you did, it was wrong. And that, I believe, is one of the aspects of the psychological aspect of you need to come together as a team. You need to suck it up, and you need to be able to handle the criticism, because even if you're A1 top notch and they cut your uniform down for that inspection and you walk away discouraged and everything else, it's the drive to keep on moving forward, even though you're getting knocked to the floor for the best that you're doing. And I think that was probably a tough part for a lot of the guys, is standing in an inspection to the best of your ability, and it still wasn't good enough. And that's part of overcoming together. Hey, we're going to do this no matter what until they tell us we don't have to do it, and keep moving forward that way. One of the questions that we had was, how did you overcome these odds? And I think that you just answered that with the answers that you had. The next item is, what feelings and thoughts or emotions did you have once you knew you were graduating from basic training? Once you knew you made it? I knew for me it was a sigh of relief. I mean, I just didn't think it was going to happen.
And I agree with you, Rob. That's, for me, I'm like, I'm so glad this is over, right? I mean, I'm ready to go home, because I going back to the first question, I mean, I came from a small town, Red Bluff, right? And I actually never left that town. And to me, I thought this town is a big town, it's a big city. So when I leave and go to Great Lakes for my boot camp, I'm like, holy cow, look how many people, look how big the city is. Look at these people I'm meeting. I mean, when you go into boot camp, you meet so many people from the rest of the country. Like, wow, they have different accents. I mean, and I never knew what a Filipino was until I joined the Navy. I was like, what the heck is a Filipino?
Wow.
You know, it was just like eye-opening experience for someone who thought they came from a big place, and they're really not.
Did you serve in the Philippines during your duty?
No, I heard all about it though.
There's a whole country of them.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's just, yes, we're here, we made it. What's next? But also, as you're going through it, a little bit of anxiety going back into the world, or what you think you're going back to, where all the people that you knew beforehand may not be there anymore. Friends from college, friends from growing up, all those people, never heard from them, for while I was in basic training or really afterwards. So, it was just kind of that initial thought of, well, where does this leave me? Is this it? Is this my path? So, as you initially graduate and you're excited and you're ready to move on with your military career, it's kind of that thought of, well, what about old me? What is it now? And it's just that initial anxiety of, all right, this is the new world for me, and just kind of moving forward with that.
After dealing with that initial shock, going back once again to after you finish your recruiting there, you almost come back to your unit as a safe haven, because now you've got new friends, a new family, new buddies, and you're just not like everybody else back at home now. You have a new life. Celestina?
Yeah, for me, it was the first huge accomplishment after I graduated high school. So as an adult, I was proud. I did something huge. I did something for myself, and it instilled my first really in-depth feeling of patriotism. And that's where my patriotism just really grounded and started to grow from there. because now I knew that I wasn't just doing something selfish, but now I'm doing something for my country. And it was a real game changer for me.
Were there any points in your boot camp career that were a major turning point where you struggled to accomplish a certain task, and all of a sudden you accomplished that task, and now it seemed like that was the turning point for you to be able to complete your training?
That's a good one. Yeah, I think that all the you know, at the end part where you're having to you break down your weapons and put them back together in a certain time, you had to go through all your testing at the end. I think that was it, where you got to see each milestone. Yes, I passed this. Yes, I passed the first aid. Yes, you know, and all of that. I think that was my turning point of, look at me, I am turning into a soldier, and I can do this.
Awesome. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to move on to the next video here. And the next video is, let's see, in the heat of the battle. And so that'll be the next point, and we'll be asking more questions when we come back from that. So now we'll go ahead and watch In the Heat of the Battle.
Every time you go out on patrol, every step you think is a booby trap, every corner is an ambush. And eventually you just become so used to that heightened level of fear and anxiety that it becomes the new normal. I had no idea what it sounded like to get shot at. I always thought that it was a bang bang when you hear that, but you actually hear the supersonic crack of the bullet before you ever hear a bang. So you hear this like a ruler smacking a desk sound. Prior to my first firefight, I'd never heard that sound before. I flew MD-17 bombers. I was navigator. Flying over the target, you went through literally a field of bursting shells with flak, shards of steel coming through the thin walls of the plane and rattling around in the cabin. But my head was shaking, and bombing Berlin was a 10-hour trip.
I was a military police officer in Iraq. Part of our mission over there was to train the Iraqi police. So my first day on the job was like a ride along. We go and pick up this Iraqi police officer. We have an interpreter with us, and you know, we're driving through the city and we're getting shot at. And I'm like, this is crazy, you know, like this happens every day. I'm like, every day?
The civilian world view of combat is somebody shooting at you and you're shooting back at them. The Coast Guard's combat is Mother Nature. When somebody's in trouble, it's you and your crew that's got to go out there and risk your lives to save them. You know, when you're up against the 25-foot seas and you get out into the surf, you know what it's like to battle Mother Nature. But it's pretty exhilarating when you're able to get out there, effect your rescue, and get home.
You know, there's nothing unmanned about unmanned aircraft. I'm sitting in the box in Southern Nevada, and I'm 6,000 miles away from the aircraft that I'm flying. There's maybe a 2-second delay. I mean, it goes from Afghanistan, it's a satellite, bounces down to the relay station, piped via our secure internet to Las Vegas.
intents and purposes. I'm in combat. Mentally, that's where you are. It's bizarre.
So this is the end of our second video here. And basically it's giving some examples of what combat looks like in different battle situations. And so our question will, first question will be for in the heat of the battle is, what is your mission? What was your mission during wartime service? And there's three of them. So I'm just gonna read all three of them and then we'll come back to them each one. So you have an idea to think about some of these. What was your motivating factor for getting through your missions? And how did the military help you with transitioning in and out of your missions? I can relate. I ran convoys in Fallujah, Iraq from 2006 and 2007. We performed over 144 combat missions outside the wire. And where you saw the explosion of the IED going off by the Humvee, we witnessed those almost daily while we were on our convoy missions. The first ones are extremely scary, and after that, you're expecting them everywhere. And sometimes they happen and sometimes they don't. You could be passing another convoy on a highway coming out of Fallujah or Baghdad, and they would hit an IED on the other side of the highway as you're passing them. And because it was a threat area, we would end up having to continue our mission on in our own way, and they had to take care of themselves on that other side. Because if we were to stop and take another strike, or we sent our corpsmen across the intermediate area to take care of them, now we lose our corpsmen and we don't have anybody to help take care of us. It was a tough situation, but each convoy that was out there was responsible for maintaining their own integrity and taking care of themselves and their vehicles. We would have upwards of sometimes 110 semi-trucks in a convoy. Sometimes when we left the wire out of Fallujah, it would take us 45 minutes and our convoy would be between 6 miles and 8 miles long. It was just, it was an enormous amount of responsibility as for myself as a convoy commander. And so those pictures really bring back the memories that where that one IED went off, it looked like it was downtown Fallujah. But a lot of those little towns and villages look the same. And so you're constantly aware. We were at battle stations almost 24 hours a day, always trying to figure out where the enemy was going to strike next so that we could be aware and ahead of the game. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to those different situations? It doesn't always have to be a combat situation. It could be a traumatic situation in your training or where you were serving that might have added to that situation.
I think for me, speaking about the combat experience, the hope of returning home and seeing my family, I think that was a driving factor for me, just to keep going. I was married before I joined the Army. I joined 17 days after 9/11 happened. So we trained during that initial push, and I was in Afghanistan from 2003 to 2004. But just you know, getting a letter was a driving factor to just keep going, knowing that one day I'll be home, and just keeping those around me safe, and they're doing the same. So that was a big thing to look forward to.
Well, and even at that time, we didn't have good computer access back, especially at the beginning of the war. And even in Fallujah at 6 and 7, we wrote a lot of letters. We were on the road so much that they issued us an Iridium phone so we could actually stop and use the Iridium phone because there was no other way for our personnel to be able to call home. And so it was some pretty tight and some pretty tough situations there. But that's where you learned the camaraderie. Every man stood on the back of another man and helped the next man up. And we all covered each other's butts. That's one of the only ways that we could survive where we were at, is literally every man had each other's six, and it was a complete circle. And so yeah, I still believe that my last tour in Iraq, I served with the best men in the world for what we were doing. And I owe my life to them. And I know that some of them owe their lives to me because it took all of us to be able to make it through some of those missions. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? I'd like to remind you, if you're listening, that you can go ahead and text in a question or a comment at any time. We'd like to go ahead and talk about those items, or you're welcome to just listen to the stories as we move forward and be able to share our experiences with you. So we're going to look at the next video. The next video is Find a Purpose After Military Service. Finding a purpose is like finding a different or new mission. One will come across many potential missions in the civilian world, and the veteran is no longer told which mission to take. This video and discussion will go over these new situations and mission ideas. Again, this is Finding a Purpose After Military Service.
After the military, I didn't really find a calling or a purpose. Just trying to figure out what that new normal was going to be like. That was really hard, you know, to deal with. And then the Haiti earthquake happened. You know, I felt compelled to go. Started just calling people that I knew, seeing if they would go to Haiti with me. And eventually we found ourselves down in Port-au-Prince. Sitting in the back of that pickup truck on top of gear, felt just like rolling out of the wire of a forward operating base, getting ready to go on a mission. This is generally how it's going to work. As soon as they're done, I'm going to go through and I'm going to number the bed. So we kind of committed on that first week or two in Port-au-Prince that we would try to actually build an organization that would harness the skills of veterans to, you know, to help people after disasters. We draw on a lot of the elements that veterans miss from the military. Most of these folks, they join when they're 18 years old. They have this pride in who they are for maybe the first time in their life. And they go to war and they come home and they get a medal pinned on their chest, and people shake their hands in the airport, thank them for their service, and then at some point they get out and all of that's gone, and suddenly they look in the mirror 6 months or 6 years after they get out of the military, and all they can think about is they'll never be as awesome as he used to be. One of the things that Team Rubicon tries to do is re-inject that sense of self, literally give them a new uniform and a new mission that they look at and they say, I actually look in the mirror every morning and I'm pretty proud of what I'm doing. We started with 8 volunteers. We've got over 100,000 now. I have a lot of people say, how can you possibly ask these veterans to give any more than they already have? And my reply is always, they need it. They need to be asked to give more. That's what makes them tick. And when people stop asking them to serve, that's when they feel like a discarded tool. You know, that tool still has utility.
So coming back, we are the video that we just watched was video 3. It's Finding a Purpose After Military Service. And the first question that we're going to go ahead and ask is, what was your transition like from military to education or military to career? And what were some of your obstacles or frustrations that you encountered, or how did you overcome them? So I know that every one of us, when we got out, we felt like we were on our own and we didn't have our buddies or our immediate family around us. And you almost feel like you're in a situation without your flak vest or your combat vest. You feel kind of naked, like I don't have my support group around me to talk with me, or to be able to go to if I have a question, or you're senior enlisted to go and, hey, I get a question about this in my life, and they were generally there to help you with your career, to give you counseling as you went through your military career. When you find yourself outside, unless you have a buddy that's around you that you've served with, you don't have that support. And that was something I really struggled with after getting out of the military. I know some of you are shaking your heads.
Yeah, Robin, I have to agree with you. What you're saying is, for me, after I left the Navy, I was lost, right? I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anyone tell me what to do, right? I was left on my own to figure it out. And the loss of my identity of who I was, right? I was someone in the military.
Right.
I was telling people,
you had your own authority.
Yeah, I was telling people what to do sometimes. I was in charge of budgets, and now I'm at my parents' house staring out into nowhere. It's like, okay, what do I do now? What's my sense of purpose, right? So it took a while for me to actually figure it out. That's when I started going to school. I actually started at Butte College and used my GI Bill. And that helped me with my process.
Can anyone else relate or give a story according to that?
Yeah, I think probably we all can, right? I mean, it's we all get out and what the heck do we do? You know, for me, I had a little bit of I don't know, coming to Jesus moment, I guess you could say. You know, I get out of the military, and as I transition out, I have a huge family crisis. So my plans for transition from military to what I wanted my career to be was just kind of put on hold. It was said, you know, everything just was like, hey, this isn't the time. And so as I dealt with family crisis and everything, and eventually transitioned to what the rest of my career was going to be, there was nobody there. I look left and right, and it's just me. You know, it's what am I going to do the rest of my life that's going to make me feel like I have purpose again? You know, in the military, I had purpose. I was a target analyst. What was my job? Keep people safe and keep the bad guys from coming back to us. And now my purpose was, well, I didn't have one. You know, I kind of had to dig through the weeds and figure out what it was that I could continue to serve. And I think that video, you know, directly relates to how I transitioned. Was, you know, as we're all kind of taught, this service piece of being in the service, right? And losing that was kind of one of my I guess my core values of life was, you know, I want to continue to serve. I don't know what capacity that's going to be, but that's what I want to do. And filling that void wasn't a two-step process, you know. And I think we've all probably been there, where we're jumping from one thing to another to try to figure out what that void is, to figure out what that service needs to be. And you know, where I found the service again was in veterans. You know, it's the day-to-day talking to veterans, listening to their stories, and having brotherhood outside the military again it has been that void. So that transition, as messy as it was, that's what it needed to be. You know, had to get back to what can I do to continue to serve in a capacity that's not directly related to my job in the military.
I think another item also, we became ingrained with our common core, with the honor, courage, and commitment, and country and family, and the core of what we were taught, not just in boot camp, but after that, maintaining that that certain esprit de corps. And when you get out of the military and you go to depend on civilians, and you expect them sometimes to have that same professional commitment from a military person, and they have nothing. They don't know what courage is. They don't know what commitment is. They don't know what wearing a uniform is. They're sloppy. They don't talk like we talk. They're not committed. They show up late, or they don't show up at all. It's, you know, it's we work so hard to come to the point where we are at by the time we get out, however, whatever time that is. And I think that's part of the soul searching. is we're searching for someone that is like-minded, who has something to relate to where we serve, where we were, where those things took place. Didn't matter whether you're in combat or not. Just in your daily duties, you salute the flag in the morning, you salute the flag in the evening because you respect the colors. And so we have the Veterans Museum. And when I put the flag up at the Veterans Museum, I salute the flag when I take it up, and I salute the flag when I take it down. And I'm the only one out there by myself. But you know what? That's still part of my core values of being in the military. That doesn't go away because we fought for those colors. We know that men and women died underneath those colors. And that's just one little piece of my military duty that I can still uphold and show respect for my country and my flag. And the smallest thing is raising and lowering. I missed taps in the evening and coming to a standstill on base and saluting the flag. That was part of our lives. And that doesn't happen anywhere any longer.
Yeah. I know for me, it was a hard transition. Back when I got out, we didn't have, the TAPS program or transitioning out and all that. So, but I was an MP, I was military police, I was a police officer, and I was also a combat MP. And I wasn't in combat, but that's what they called it. But I thought ever since I was in high school, I wanted to be a police officer. That was like who I wanted to be. That was my dream job. So when I went into the military, I wouldn't go in as anything else. And I sat at MAPS for 3 days until they gave me my MP job because I wanted to be a police officer. And then I moved up to investigations. And then I was in charge of, I was the supervisor, as with MPs. So I moved up there and transition. When I got out, I thought, oh, I'll be a police officer because that's who I am. It was my identity. It wasn't my job. It was who I was. I worked 12-hour shifts for 4 years, and I was an MP, and I lived, breathed MP. We hung out together. We always, anywhere we went, there were MPs with us. They was our battle buddies. And I got out and I applied for a police force, and I'm not gonna say who, and it was several, and I didn't get it. And that I felt so deflated because how could they, like, I already had a year of administrative justice. I already had college. I had 4 years of experience, and every time I would apply to be a police officer, I didn't get it. And it was really hard for me to realize that I wasn't going to be a police officer in the civilian world. And it was tough. It was like one of the hardest things I had to give up, and give up my dream of doing that. And so I had to really figure out my identity. Now what? Who am I going to be? What am I going to be? And Shasta College was amazing. Not just because James is on here, but because I went back and I finished my AA degree in administration of justice. I had already had a year in, and I thought, well, I'll start there and I'll figure it out. I didn't realize what a veteran was, honestly. I know that sounds naive, but I got out of the military and then I became a civilian. Nobody really told me I was a veteran. And it's sad to say, but when I found out I was a veteran, and I wanted to serve veterans. And that's why I became the Veteran Service Officer, and I volunteer on every committee I can think of, is because I found my identity and I found my people. I refound my people, because they are my people. And that's where I am.
I think that's a key factor, is finding your people,
Mhm.
being able to do that. You're talking about transition. When we came out of Iraq, we flew directly back from Al-Assad into Ali Salim, Kuwait. And everybody that was deployed were supposed to spend 2 weeks in transition, downtime, relaxing, gear off, no firearms, no weapons. And I was back for 1 day, and they realized that our gunner's mate, the armorer, had forgotten an M203 in Baghdad. And actually, it was in Al-Taqatum. And so, because he was under my command and he had gun decked it and said that we had it and we did not have it, I went and sat at the Agdag for 4 days waiting for a C-130 flight back to Baghdad, and then convoyed from Baghdad back to Al-Taqatum, signed for M203, and then went back to Baghdad and waited 2 more days for a flight back to Kuwait. Got to Kuwait, turned in everything, got it signed off, spent 1 night and got on a plane and flew home the next day. Everybody else had 2 weeks of downtime, and I was still in the combat zone the entire time by myself without the battalion. And it was a really tough time because I was going through separation anxiety with my men. I had 25 men that were under my watch. They were my team, and they were all in transition, but the chief was back out taking care of the chief duties. Didn't matter whether it was my responsibility, I was responsible. And so once again, coming back, they were ahead of me. And then they were pretty much all gone in transition by the time I got back to Gulfport, Mississippi. And then I went to Balboa Naval Hospital and spent 4 months at Balboa Naval Hospital, taking care of some back injuries and PTSD and things like that by myself, once again, without my men. And so it was a very, very difficult time for me to be going through all this separation anxiety. And I had none of my support team. There was no support team within my fingers or reach. And so I really struggled very hard coming back through that time and being able to come back. And it took me a long time to find my way back into developing the Veterans Museum and things like that, because I knew if our story when we were in Iraq and Afghanistan wasn't being told properly, then I realized that when my brother served during Vietnam, that's why his story wasn't being told properly. And when my uncle served in Korea, his story wasn't told properly. My father served during World War II, and his story was told properly because World War II was so uniting of the United States during that time frame. And so that's one of the reasons I thought it was so important for us to continue an organization that tells the story of the men and women who wear the uniform and how critical that is. Just like you're talking right now, you've worn that uniform and your story is important and your feelings are important and your emotions. When a certain radio music comes on the radio and you flash back to those certain situations or things like that, and you maintain your composure and you move forward, those are critical. And it's not just with us, but it's critical with any veteran that's coming back and struggling in those areas and those ideas. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? No? Okay, let's see the next question. Once you're out of the military, when did you realize this is where you should be and this is what I should be doing right now?
For me is when I actually started attending Butte College. I got a job in the veterans office at Butte College as a VA work study. I worked for my boss, and I started learning the process of using the GI Bill and helping students. And I said, you know what? This is what I need to do. I need to help other veterans transition, because I knew how difficult it was for me to transition. Let me make it easier for other veterans that are getting out. Let me show them that they can apply for financial aid. Let me show them all the pitfalls that I fell into so that I can help them avoid that. That's where I found my home.
Andrew, did you have something that you wanted to add to that? You're shaking your head, so.
Yeah, you know, I think it's the second that I knew that I was where I was supposed to be was when I told myself I wasn't going to be doing this. you know. I told myself I never join the military. Sure enough, there it was. Told myself I never moved back to Reading. Sure enough, there it was. And you know what? Every step of the way, every time I tell myself I'm never going to do something, the door's open and here it is. And I step into the position, and my first meeting was my boss didn't really know what it was to be a veteran. So he got a bunch of veterans to come have lunch with me. And the first thing out of one of the veterans' mouth was, "I'm gonna be straight with you," with a knife hand. I was like, this is it. You know, this is where I'm supposed to be. These guys, you know, it's a community of people that I can continually serve, that not only understand me, but I understand them. And that's one of the biggest things at transitioning was, what the heck do? I don't have anybody anymore. You know, it's a void that was easily filled by me stepping into those shoes and just kind of embracing back to being in the military and being around people that understand and need help understanding the world now. You know, you struggle through those hard times in the transition, and it helps all the other veterans that are transitioning now. So that's kind of when I knew that was it.
To liken that, I think when I look at it, it's like, as CBs, we work with all branches. We're one of the only branches that work with every single branch doing what we do with community service, and then also self-help on the bases and things like that. When we were wearing our CB uniform, we walked on the Air Force base or into an office space. We knew that even though we're wearing different uniforms, we were like-minded. Hey, these guys are in the military too. We can talk without talking, but we can talk and know what we're doing. We can refer to different things without explaining to it. And they yeah, we understand how that is. And this is what our mission is. How can you help? Whether it was, or we went on the Army, worked with the Army on their facilities when we were up at Fort Lewis with our battalion up there. That like-mindedness is so important when you're, like you were talking about, working with the other veterans. When you come into the room with other veterans, you know what's going on. You don't have to say anything. You already know that there's a silent camaraderie there. And I think, and even though there's the Korea and Vietnam veterans, and then we have our Desert Storm veterans, and then Iraq and Afghanistan. I was 40 years old and 44 years old on my first 2 tours in Iraq. And so I was always older than the rest of the men on my teams and working around me. So coming back, I just want to let our listeners know, it doesn't matter whether you're 25 coming back off your duty or you're 45 coming back out of the war zone. The issues are the same, whether you're a young person or you're an older person. You're dealing with the transition issues. You're dealing with the separation anxieties. You're dealing with not having your, I think if the more years you spend, the more you're really sucked into it, because your every day is like that. So that's now all of a sudden you take the uniform off. And it's like, well, what am I supposed to wear? You know, because normally you only change into civilian clothes on a weekend or when you're off duty. And now you're totally off duty. You're not going back. So, I mean, that's a mindset by itself. I mean, even changing the clothes in your closet or your shoes around or whatever else, that makes a difference also. Anyone else have anything they'd like to offer?
Yeah, when I got out, I think the main point, I tried going back to school. School did not agree with me, I should say. So I went to work and I did maintenance and I did refrigeration and other things. And I mean, it paid well, but there was no sense of purpose. And I didn't realize that I was lacking that sense of purpose. So I quit my job. I went back to school and I got started in the Veterans Resource Center and in the Veteran Services Office, and they helped me get my benefits started. Later on, I got a job through there as a work study, and I realized, you know, we're helping veterans out. This is kind of like being in the military, where, you know, you're helping each other succeed. You're constantly trying to promote each other through the military. And then now outside in the civilian world, I'm able to help veterans succeed. I mean, with pursuing school, ultimately it is up to them to achieve those goals, but to know that we could help them find those loopholes or finish the paperwork out, and so that way they can get their benefits and then further their, I guess, experience by, getting them networked within the community. And so that had a great deal of purpose for me. And I realized, okay, this is where I need to be. I need to be able to help veterans. I have a story, they have a story. And, even though our war experiences might be different, even though our service experiences might be different, the bottom line is we both sign the dotted line. And I think that is what we all have in common. And we could all have that camaraderie built upon that. So that's where I found my sense of purpose.
I think one of the other common threads that we're talking about this evening is each one of you have a college experience where you've gone and you've been through the veteran service program, and you've talked with, or basically I say served with, but went to school with other veterans there at the college or the university. And if was one of those things that we could reach out to our listeners and share with them is that as you've listened to our the individuals here on our program this evening, that I'm going to turn it back to you for just a second here, but they would encourage you to go to the college and find out the benefits that you have, if you still have benefits, and be able to get yourself in some of these programs, especially if you're struggling, because if you're eligible for these programs, this is a perfect opportunity to get back in there, go back to school, occupy your mind with fresh subject matter, and be able to move forward in the community and help yourself to be the best you can be by educating yourself, because education, I believe, is so important. And each one of you obviously believe that too. Do any of you from the different colleges or programs, would you like to expound on that?
Well, Rob, what you said, I totally agree with. We've helped veterans that were enrolled at Butte College. We reached out to them because they listed themselves as veterans. And there's a few of them we found out they still qualify for benefits.
Sure.
We actually helped them get those benefits, and they actually completed the degrees with those benefits. Or we helped them apply for vocational rehab to another benefit they can qualify for. So I always say, always apply. Let them tell you don't qualify. Let's apply, see what happens.
I think one of the misnomers that we hear, that I even hear with Homeward Bound and to the Veterans Museum, is that, oh, I've talked to them before and they denied me. And every time I ask somebody, they say I can't do it or I'm not eligible. And things have changed so much that people need to reach out and experience those opportunities, because there's so many new opportunities out there, and not every single situation pertains to everybody. Everybody's an individual going in looking for those opportunities.
What they also do is they talk to their friends, and their friends are the experts. So they're like, if my friends said I don't qualify, I'm not going to qualify. I tell people, don't rely on your friend. Go to the horse, the source of the information. Make sure you get the information from them.
Well, and it's once again, it's like being a junior troop and listening to your buddy in the next bunk over saying, whatever else. But you never went and talked to your senior enlisted or the chief or the sergeant or whatever else, when it may be right there readily available, including some funding in front of you. And you just, like you said, you went to the wrong source. And so I'd like to encourage people to go to the veteran service offices. Celestine has a whole office full of individuals who are there to help on a daily basis. And then also the veteran service officers at Shasta College and Butte College and Simpson University. You guys are not there to push people away. You guys are there to put a hand out and say, come on in, let's get you going to school. Let's get you back on the road again. Let's get you out of your parents' house. Let's get you educated so you can get a job. Let's find out if there's money there for you.
Reach out to any of our schools or Celestina. I mean, we're here to help you. I don't care if you're not going to Butte College. I'm here to help any veteran that needs the help. So call any one of us.
I think that's
absolutely
key. Yes. Do you have many programs, Celestina?
Oh, we do. We ask. What I don't want is someone to come in that they're in their 90s and come in and say, I didn't even know you existed. I'm trying to reach every single veteran in Shasta County, and just come on in and bring your DD 214 and just sit down and talk to us. It's free. And it takes 30 minutes of your time. And everybody has at least 4 standing benefits for your time in service. We want to tell you about them. We want to I mean, it's your option whether you want to use them or not. And some you can't use until you're older. But it's knowledge is power. And you
I
need
agree.
to have that knowledge so that what if you need something, you have that in your back pocket, whether you want to apply now or want to apply later, at least you'll know your benefits.
And you don't even have to put in for a degree. You can take classes
No.
that help you in your daily life, maybe in just something you like to do. It doesn't have to be a 2-year or 4-year program to go and take classes. The opportunity to go there to the school and to be able to utilize those classes as a benefit to yourself. Maybe the first classes you take don't go to an AA or to a 4-year degree, but if they're encouraging you to get back into the saddle and to re-educate yourself, then that's the way to start, so it can push you into the next category.
Yeah, I know that Shasta College has many offers trade schools. They have welding and they have auto mechanics and many different ones. So you don't need an AA degree, if I'm correct, James. That they can take a trade school and learn how to go to be a plumber, electrician, or if you're a hands-on person, you don't have to do that.
And that's what I was referring to as not having to just step into a 2-year degree. Or, I mean, there's, like you said, the certifications out there, even for going to HVAC, getting a certification for that. There's many job opportunities for that right now, as you were talking about earlier, Troy. I don't know if I said this, but the last question we had is, how did you find and define your new mission? So as you step forward into the positions you're in now, is this your new mission, or did you try a couple of other things before you found this slot that seemed to work so well?
Yeah,
I keep looking at you, Andrew.
Yeah, this was not my my first mission, that's for sure. I went into the Army as at 22 years old, already with a college degree, and I had a degree in psychology. So whenever I got out, I was thinking, well, this is my stepping stone. Military was my stepping stone to what I want to do. I wanted to do, investigation, CIA, FBI type of stuff, and that just didn't work out. So as I transitioned and trying to figure out what I was going to do, I was like, okay, well, I have a degree in psychology, so might as well put that to use. So I started working with kids with autism and military families over at Travis Air Force Base. And as I worked through that and was getting my master's degree in behavioral health, just kind of realized, man, I'm burnt out working with kids with autism and these long hours, not getting paid what I need to be. But this veteran piece kind of sparked something in me, and sure enough, kind of found my way from there. Just working back in the veteran community. It may not have been the first right step, but it led me to where I wanted to be and where I should be.
I think that's one of the things that we need to talk with our listeners is, there's many times we step up to the plate and swing and miss. And so those are the missions that we try to perform. Those are the new ideas. What about this? What about that? And then they fall through the cracks, especially with COVID going on right now and different things like that. Job availability for certain aspects and different things. The best thing that we can do for you right now is encourage you not to give up. If you've tried things and they've failed, if you tried things and they just didn't work out and you're at your straw's end, every individual on this screen has the capability for you going to and asking for information capability. There are many opportunities, even through the Veterans Museum and Homeward Bound Military Family Support Services, where we can help you immediately in our community. And then we will refer you to one of the colleges or to the Veterans Service Office to find out more information on how you can be helped. And so, or if you have not gotten your card yet and you need to go see medical and we need to get you over to the VA clinic, once again, we can work with you at the VA clinic and also the Veterans Service Office. We've got a lot of veterans out there that have come back and are dealing with injuries. Either they don't know, they don't remember how, or they just haven't gone out and gotten their medical card. And I have people come to me all the time, well, I have this injury, whatever else, and I don't know what to do. And I said, dude, you are eligible for military benefits, for medical benefits, you need to go get your card. You need to get off your butt and go down there, because a lot of times it's laziness or lackadaisicalness. And it's just that kick in the seat of the pants that they need because they just fallen into a rut. And there's a lot of veterans that are in ruts that need to be yanked out of that rut and encouraged to get back in there. You know, we lost a lot of veterans in Iraq and Afghanistan, but we're losing more every day to suicide. And it's because they're not engaged, they're not involved, they're not socializing with other veterans. They think that there's no hope out there, and it couldn't be farther from the truth, because this whole program that we're putting on tonight is a hand out and a hand up to say, hey, we're here, we have opportunities for you. We don't want you to take your life. We don't want you to think about it. And we want to encourage you to get back in the saddle and let's ride this horse hard. And so I know that each one of you, when you have some veterans come in, I don't know if you've seen, maybe you have seen, you might give an example of a veteran that came in that was at their last straw. I know that when we have them come in through Homeward Bound, they've lost their job, that maybe they lost their apartment, they're late on their car payment. And through our Homeward Bound program, we're able to help them with emergency funds to get them back even again as much as possible, help them with groceries and gas money and things like that. And that's where we can help them get to you, because if they don't have gas, they can't drive. If they don't have the food to take care of their family, then they're worried and struggling about that. And because there a lot of jobs and businesses have closed, this is something that's in our community, and it may be that opportunity once again to get them, to have them go to you and ask the questions. I don't have all the questions with our program. That's why you guys are the subject matter experts here in our communities, so that they can come to you and ask those questions and find out, hey, what are my opportunities? Do I really have an opportunity, or are they just talking? And so I think that's really important with each one of you and your expertise for what you do for veterans at the colleges and universities. Would anybody like to add to that or talk about their particular organization?
I'll go.
Go right ahead.
So I started out, and I didn't know what quite I wanted to do. So I did go back and get my bachelor's and my master's in psychology counseling. And then I started with the MFT, Marriage and Family Therapist program. And I was a therapist for a while, but it just wasn't really where I needed to be. I just didn't feel it. It was hard. It was exhausting. And it was long hours. Before that, I went to the Veterans Service Office and checked out on my benefits way back. And I loved it. I love the people. I love the job. So I said, hey, if you ever get an opening, and they said there's never an opening. Right. But I said, if there's an opening, call me, text me, email me, flag me down. I don't care what. There was an opening in 2010. And I applied and I got it, extra help position. I worked 3 part-time jobs in order to keep my foot in the door and work that job. It just spoke to me. I got to help veterans. I also got to understand benefits, and there are benefits that were earned. You know, this is things that are attached to each person that they've earned through their time in service. And that was really an eye-opening experience for me. And it's not a hand down or a handout. It is something there for you to grasp and use at any time. And I did use my GI Bill when to put myself through college. And that was huge for me. And it really helped me not have these incredible loans out there. And I appreciate the colleges, and it was Simpson. I got my bachelor's through, and I really appreciate their GI Bill and helping me through it, and the counselors there. I finally applied for the full-time position in 2012 and interviewed and got it. And I've been there ever since. This is my dream. This is my vision. I am where I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to retire out of here. And I just love helping veterans. And I not only, we not only give benefits, but I have been on the Veterans Home Committee, helping bring the grand opening in the Veterans Home and better that. I've been on the Cemetery Support Committee. I was on CVAC, Shasta County Veterans Affiliated Council. It gave me opportunities to give back to my community freely in a volunteer way. Because one of the things that I noticed is Shasta County, when I first got out, did not have services like we do today. And so my goal is not only to, of course, tell everybody about their benefits, but my goal is to build Shasta County up to where, I mean, we have 16,000 veterans here, and I want more and more and more resources. I want to make sure that we honor all our veterans in all capacity. And if that means putting up a better Veterans Grove, or if that means giving more services and help support the cemetery, if that means supporting the museum, or if that means putting up a special monument in Anderson or whatever, it doesn't matter to me. I just want to honor veterans, and that is my path. And that's where I'm going to continue.
Well, I'd like to say kudos to you, Celestina, because we can't keep a veteran service officer in Tehama County. And I live just over the border. So I use Shasta County for all my business for the veteran service office. And that's where I send everybody that comes to us is to your office because they just can't keep a veteran service officer down there in Tehama County. And so when I have sent individuals there before, they said, we got there, we waited, nobody showed up. The person we talked to didn't know anything about anything because they didn't have any schooling as a veteran service officer or whatever else. And that's not a hit on the veteran service office in Tehama County. That's a hit on Tehama County. And so once again, your office is solid. You have people that are there all the time. You reach out to all the veterans and the widows, because we send widows to you also, and you talk with those individuals. And I know that they're grateful for it, and we're grateful for the fact that you're willing to work with them and talk with them. I know through our veterans Silver Star, our widows and veterans program, that you've helped several of the widows that we've sent to you so that they were able to keep their homes and their cars because after their veteran husband or wife died, they had no benefits or they were just lost. And so by going through that program, it's not just helping our younger veterans, but we're taking care of our senior veterans and their wives, the widows also. And so I think it's important when we look at our veterans community, we're looking at the young man or woman who's going to boot camp, and we're looking at the survivor, the widow that's 89 or 92 years old of a veteran that served during World War II, or the widow of a veteran that might be 35 years old and they either committed suicide or they were killed in a car accident, or they were KIA in Afghanistan or Syria. And so we get the full spectrum of all these veterans coming through. It's not like just one here, one there. We get a spectrum of all these individuals, a cross-section of the entire military life. And if we didn't have these supporting programs from the different colleges and universities and a strong veteran service office, we wouldn't be able to reach out with our program with Homeward Bound Military Family Support Services to help them immediately with services and then get them to you so they can get contacted for the rest of their services. It's a team effort. Once again, it's like you said, it's veterans helping veterans, including their family. And that's one of the things that when I first came back from Iraq is that the families were struggling because the veteran was gone, and the families were struggling because of the PTSD and the separation between the veteran and the family. And so when we developed that nonprofit, we developed it to take care of the nucleus, which is the wife and the kids and the veteran, or the husband and the kids and the veteran. Because you almost sometimes have to look at them separated because of the issues that are in the family with the transition back together. And sometimes the transition is 6, 7, 8, 9 years. They've been dealing with all this chaos in their families. And the wife's looking for an opportunity, the husband's looking for an opportunity, but the veteran is the one that needs that support. And so that's why it's so important for us in our community to have these organizations that reach out on a daily basis. You know, someone was talking about Veterans Day and Memorial Day. Well, that's just great. But you know, in our organization, Veterans Day is 365 days. In your organization, Veterans Day is 365 days, because every day we reach out to help a veteran in need, man or woman, girl, boy, whatever that is. And also the veterans and their families need to know that there are benefits for the families and the kids to go if they're 100% disabled. And so that's something else that they may not know, these veterans may not know. And that's an opportunity by going to the Veteran Service Office in Shasta County. Celestine can share those benefits so that maybe your kids might be able to go to school and be able to have that reduced cost or a free ride because of their injuries and their military duty. And so have all of you used your GI Bill? You can just wave your head. So when I came back, I used my GI Bill to finish my commercial helicopter license. And so that was something that I really wanted to do after my first tour. And coming back for my second tour, I came back with combat diabetes, and they won't let me fly commercial now. So I did all that work with my GI Bill to fly helicopters and everything else. And then I got my ticket taken away by the medical. And so I struggled with that coming back also, because that was my plan. That was my mission, was to come back and fly helicopters commercially. And that just didn't pan out. And so that's why we found another mission. And that's why it's so important to not give up. Some days it's really easy to give up. One extra beer, one extra bottle of wine or whatever else, and whatever you're taking, whatever you're using for self-medication, it can put you in a really bad situation. And once again, we want to encourage you to be able to reach out to these different organizations and to continue to move on. We're going to come to discussion 4 here. And the next video discussion is going to explain what it means for veterans to tell their stories and explain why they hold stories within themselves. It does take strength for veterans to realize that their story is part of the full story. The nation will never know the full story without talking and interacting with veterans. And just before we go into that section called Telling Our Story, my father was a World War II veteran. And as a young boy, I used to beg my father to tell me about World War II. And my father never would. And I was always upset about that, even when I was in the Navy and finally made second-class petty officer. I thought, okay, now my dad's going to talk to me. I'm a second-class petty officer. And, you know, he was proud that I had made second class, but we could never get that connection of World War II and new Navy petty officer to mingle. And I guess that he had lost a couple of his friends while he was serving on a Liberty ship in the South Sea. And it traumatized him enough. He was only 19 years old, right out of high school, enough to where he never wanted to talk about it his whole life. So he carried that with him. And it wasn't just my father, it was the majority of World War II veterans. And when I came back from Iraq, I told myself, my dad never talked about World War II. And I'm upset about it because I felt that that was part of my heritage in the Navy, is getting those stories from my dad. And I didn't get those stories. And that's one of the reasons I'm so vocal now. Is even though there's days it's painful and I cry through some of the situations I talk about on the radio and different things, it is so important for every one of us as veterans, no matter where we served or when we served, to share those experiences, because nobody else will ever know unless we tell them. And so now if you're ready, we're going to go ahead. The next discussion, video 4, is Telling Our Story. And when we get ready to come back, I hope you all have another idea in your mind how we want to talk about this. We're coming up on about a half an hour left, so we have plenty of time to be able to discuss this, and each of you be able to tell more of your story. And we want to encourage our listeners to have the opportunity to share your story with a son or daughter or a child or a neighborhood kid or your friends' children or just your friends sometimes. And I know it's tough and they may not understand, but it's critical that we share these experiences with them so they understand the service and the sacrifice that we've been around, that we've seen, and it is so important in our lives. And that's why we're here today. Video 4, Telling Our Story.
we're often just told what is happening from people we trust, who we elect to office. And it's difficult to understand what that is unless you are a part of the 0.5% of people in this country who serve in the military. And so if you don't have those 0.5% of people having conversations with the rest of the 99.5% who do not serve, then there's no way they can actually be well informed about how we're spending our time and how we're operating as a country and what principles we're operating on. When I talk to civilians about war, I hope to help them think a little bit more critically about the stories they've been told about what war is and means. Especially in the US, we tend to tell stories that leave out most of the war. We tell stories about Iraq, about American soldiers. We don't talk about the Iraqis. We tell stories about Afghanistan, about American soldiers. We don't talk about the Afghanis.
It's not just veterans who have the right and obligation to speak about military policy. It's not just that we need to listen to veterans to talk back, right? At the end of the day, what I want is just for people to be engaged.
If our country is functioning as it should, our citizens should be really thoughtful about how and why and when and where we send our sons and daughters to go and fight. Part of that responsibility is also in helping us to come home, and sharing in that moral burden. Every time I tell a story about something terrible that happened overseas, I actually feel like I'm unpacking part of that weight, putting it on somebody else's shoulder. And people often don't want to hear those stories because they either think Jake doesn't want to share that story with me because I'll never understand and I wasn't there, or they'll say, I don't want to hear that story of Jake's, it'll make me really uncomfortable. Too bad. It's your job. You think you're uncomfortable hearing my story? Imagine how uncomfortable it was living it.
Well, we're back after watching that last segment, telling our story. And we've got 30 minutes left on this program for us to be able to talk to our community and to our listeners. And if we don't get anybody that responds, that's fine. They're listening and they're out there, and that's important that they're listening, whether they engage or not. So as we move forward through this program, once again, we'd like to fill the time slot. And I think that each one of you have some closing statements and some information about a critical story in your lives being in the military that maybe you haven't told somebody, or maybe that you don't tell a lot because it's either painful or uncomfortable. But we're opening ourselves up to other veterans that are out there that are listening right now. And this is our opportunity to say, hey, you're a brother or your sister, whether you're young or you're older, if you're a widow or if you're a civilian, we want to let you know where we're coming from our military background. Each one of us wore the uniform proudly. Each one of us did our duties to the best of our capability, wherever it was that we served. And each one of us are proud of the service that we did when we finished our time frame and we came home. And whether we were ready to leave or not, I know a lot of times the time's coming and you go, oh, I can't wait to be a civilian. And then just like, man, I should have stayed in. Or you were forced out because of a medical issue. And like myself, I wanted to stay in and they wouldn't let me because of my medical issue. And that's just as hard because you have your heart set on a certain time frame, a certain rank as you're moving through your career that you want to achieve. And then when they do that to you, now that they've stolen that away from you, because now you don't have that opportunity to continue to be successful or to move forward as you had planned, like you were talking about earlier, Andrew. James, I'm going to start with you. You have a really good telling story about being there on the airport at Andrews and talking about the aircraft coming in and how that affected you and how important it was to you for the job and the duty that you had. Share that story with us.
I'd be happy to, Rob. The mission I had was not a combat mission at all. Even though on a deployment I was in a combat zone, just because of the situations going around in the world and incidences that happened at the base prior to me being there. But yeah, my mission was in the military very unique in the sense of who I supported and what missions I supported as well. Being stationed out at Joint Base Andrews, and then my deployment was actually in Qatar, out by Saudi Arabia. So just across the Gulf from, the boots on the ground, and stuff like that. But as far as, telling your story, I guess it's kind of ironic because this is the first time I'm speaking this whole series. But I think telling your story is important. I'll tell every veteran that. And I want to emphasize that one doesn't need to go on the radio or TV to tell their story. Just find a way that's comfortable, relaxing to you, and tell your story and try different avenues. If one doesn't work, it's okay, you tried. But continue trying. Try something else. First time I tried to tell a story, I only got maybe a sentence or two out, and I realized it wasn't working. I stopped. But then there was this one time where I decided to tell my story. It was actually in a classroom. It was an English writing class out at American River College. I didn't even let the instructor know I was a veteran. But it was a writing assignment that I had to write a poem. Not only did I have to write a poem, I had to kind of copy the format of a famous poem, but I had to use my own words. But once the poem was written, the instructor said, you're going to have to write a 4 to 5 page paper analyzing and critiquing that poem as if you never wrote the poem. Some reason in my head, I said, this is an opportunity for me. And I don't know why it clicked. I said, I'm writing about my transition, my service and my transition out. So I wrote the poem, and then it took me all semester. It was a semester in thing. I knew I had to start at the beginning. And then I wrote the critique to the poem. That was probably the toughest part because there were so many things that I ended up grabbing from writing the critique that I didn't even consider when I wrote the poem. That it brought so many memories, so many things back. So I was literally telling my story to myself in a unique way. And that's just one example of how, veterans could tell their story. But, your true self and thoughts will come out if you tell your story. And it doesn't have to necessarily be to someone else, but it'll get there. Look, I'm here today. I was kind of quiet this whole time, but I will still encourage you to tell your story.
That's awesome, James. Guess I'll kind of, Dan, if you wanted to go ahead, Ken. For myself, I went through college, was planning on going officer route in college, and kind of my whole thought process was I'm going to go be an officer, and they shut down my program in ROTC, and the day before I was going to commission as an officer in the Army. And as I graduated, I was like, well, I guess I'm still going to do it. This is kind of a stepping stone of where I want to be, and ended up doing Intel boot camp at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. And then I was at lovely Fort Huachuca, Arizona for my AIT for about 8 months. And, while I was down there, I set my eyes on a goal. We had somebody come into a classroom and told me where they were at. They were at CENTCOM JSOTF, which is a Joint Special Operations Task Force doing intel. So I immediately just kind of set my eyes on that, and ended up becoming the student first sergeant for 3 platoons during the intel AIT, and getting into a program called Quick Start that was only supposed to be about 6 months long, that I ended up doing for 3.5 years. So, they wanted me back, and I, it was was a blessing, because I never would have had that opportunity had I not gone enlisted and just kind of gone that way. But you know, as I'm working there, part of my story, a lot of my story can't be told. But I think my first encounter with telling my story, come to find out, you know, 5 years later, probably, one of the first people I kind of confided in to tell my story, I went and had played golf with the other day, probably about a month ago. And as we're playing golf, he's talking to everybody, and he's like telling them, hey, this guy came to me and was telling me some of the stuff that he had to do in the military, and I didn't want him to tell me. I don't want to know about it. And you know, it's kind of an eye opener, you know. For my story, it's you know, I was an intel guy. I didn't have to do too much, but part of my mission was making sure some of our guys were safe, and we got rid of some of the guys that were bad. And part of my story, I didn't protect one of my guys. Unfortunately, watched them burn alive. You know, that's it's still not a story that, you know, to an everyday person, you tell somebody, you know, a little bit of that story, just that one sentence, I watched somebody burn alive. It's a big impact on what it was for me to be in the military as an intel analyst, and what my mission was, and where it is now. You know, it's a story that you can tell people, and they can take it for what it is, or they just don't even want anything to do with it. And for me to tell my story, it's a little bit, it's difficult. It is. Just that one reaction, the first person I ever confided in that I thought was a true friend, didn't really understand military people, come to find out 5 years later, never wanted to know in the first place. And you know, it's a struggle I think we've all kind of come into, and that's probably part of the reason, you know, that your father didn't want to tell the story. It's an understanding of, you know, I can talk to my guys that were there with me, and you know, while we're working on the same missions, we can kind of reflect on that and say, hey, look at where we are now from what happened back then, and it is what it is, and let's keep moving forward. But to tell somebody that doesn't understand those stories is it's a hard thing to come across as you tell those. It's a harsh reality when people don't want to know who you are and where you came from, being in the military. So it's to tell my story to other veterans, to civilians, I think it's a hard thing to trust, that you know, what I tell them, they're going to take as a me trusting them with a piece of me. So you know, I think that's a hard part for me, is trusting people with that piece. And that's part of the reason why I work in the veteran community. You know, it's everybody has, you know, a story or moments in the military career where things like that happen, and then you have a mutual understanding of what happened and where you came from. And so it's a whole lot easier to tell my story to veterans. But tell you what, telling it to civilians is it's a harsh reality. People don't want to know, and they don't care to know who you are, what you came from, what the military was for you. And you know, I think for me, it's a big trust piece. It's my everyday veteran that I feel like I can trust a whole lot more. So yeah.
Andrew, thank you for sharing that. And I didn't get a chance to say thank you, James, to you either. I was muted at the time. So one of the things that I found when I came back from Iraq was, especially being fresh out of the combat zone, we were so tired and so fatigued after pulling many 36-hour days. Almost every mission was 22 to 36 hours. It just hours and hours on the road, IEDs. Watching other individuals take IED strikes, whether they're Army, Air Force, Navy, or Marine Corps, and knowing that we had to continue our mission forward, even though they're scattering, trying to take care of burning vehicles, flip vehicles, and in the same token, trying to maintain our capability with our guys paying attention to the road so we don't hit a secondary ID on the opposite side of the road heading a different direction. There were many times, like you said, when I first came back and tried to share where I had been and what I had done. And literally verbal slaps in the face. People not wanting to know what you have to offer or what you said. When I first came back from Iraq, for 7 years, I was funeral honors team leader at the Eagle Veteran Cemetery, performing over 2,000 military funerals. And being out there every single day, working with the Army and the Marine Corps and other Navy veterans in that stressful situation of presenting a flag to a family who's lost a loved one, face to face, eye to eye, made me deal with my reality of Iraq face to face, and helped me to be able to talk. Some of the other veterans, the Army veterans that were there, had served in Iraq before me or after me, or in different locations at the same time frame. And having that opportunity, the camaraderie, to be able to talk to them about the situations we were at in Idiwania or in Al-Nusayriya or in Balad or Baghdad or Fallujah, Al-Qaeda, Al-Assad, you name it, all over Iraq. Yeah, we were here there. Yeah, we were here that. Oh yeah, this happened. Oh yeah, we understand because we were there at the same time or whatever else. That camaraderie was probably some of the best healing for me during the time of doing Navy funeral honors, of helping the military families, and coming back after a service in the downtime and talking with another combat veteran for a half an hour, 45 minutes, 2 hours in between services, and then going right back out to take care of the families. During 2008 to 2012, we were performing 6 military funerals a day for World War II veterans because we were losing so many World War II veterans per day during that time frame. And so that forced me, by helping other people with doing funeral honors, it forced me to look at where I'd been and to deal with some of the things that I had seen, and to be able to draw the courage out to be able to continue moving forward, because that was a new mission now. I wasn't in the combat zone anymore. I was in part of the healing zone of helping military families during that time frame. And so that was a critical aspect for me. But if I didn't have those other military veterans out there at the cemetery from the different branches that I was able to talk to be honest with you, I probably would have eaten the bullet eventually, because you just get to a point where you're so down and so depressed that you feel like there's no hope. And so by us being able to find that avenue of another veteran that can listen to us, because they're capable of listening and relating to whether they say anything or not. It's a mental, I think sometimes it's just a mental eye to eye, because you know in your mind that this veteran I'm talking to is not going to spit in my face when I get you speaking. And I think that sometimes the Vietnam veterans think that they have a corner on the market because of the way society was at that time. I don't think that they realize the struggle that we have coming back and why there's so many suicides, because we have so many individuals that come back and are separated. And because everybody's on a phone, there's no face-to-face reality. We as humans need that FaceTime. We need to be able to interface with another human and know that we're not going to be rejected. And how important that is. You know, we go all around the world helping other people. How important is it for us to come back home and help the people in our community we know? And those are our fellow veterans. Who would like to go next?
Well, Rob, do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Celestina, could you expand on what you said earlier, not being considered a veteran? I'm just wondering, is that because you're a female? Is that the reason? Or, I mean, I just want to know more about that.
So I was told because I wasn't combat veteran, I wasn't a veteran. And there was a lot of shame that I had because, you know, I would go to the, I remember one time I went to the, an event, and I walked up to American Legion and I said, hey, I'd like to possibly join. And they said, you can be in our auxiliary, not in our American Legion, because they didn't consider me a veteran because I was a woman.
That's arrogance. That's just straight up arrogance right there. You know,
yeah.
and they were wrong for saying that.
But it was like the shame, you know, they're like, oh no, you're not a veteran and you didn't serve in combat. So therefore, you know, but then working at the Veterans Service Office, I learned that it takes people in the rear, in behind the scenes, and supplies and the support to support the people in combat. And we're all a huge team. And so to answer your question, Dan, I didn't realize I was a veteran until the Women's Army Corps actually talked to me and said, yes, you're a veteran because you served, not because you had a certain job or you were somewhere deployed somewhere. It's because you served. And that's when I started embracing, oh, so I am like part of something bigger, and I am a veteran. And that's when I started embracing it. But before, I'll tell you, I got out technically in 90 until 2004. I did not know I was a military veteran.
And I think that's why it's so important to share stories, right? To empower other people who might be in the same situation where they feel like they're not veterans because they never served in combat. I got the same thing from a family member. It's like, you're not a veteran. You never served in combat. You're not a veteran. And I was so angry with my cousin for saying that. I was like, what do you mean I'm not a veteran? And then I started doubting myself as well, because he's saying it to me. So yeah, I think it's important to share our stories.
I agree. I really do. I never really share stories. I still, I'll tell you an instance. I don't share stories yet, but this is actually my first time I actually have told little bits and pieces of my time in service. I'm very private, only because I went to the VA clinic. I'll just give you an example. My husband and I were in there, and they went up to, one of the nurses went up to my husband and asked if he wanted a vaccine. And he replied, and she looked at me, and she looked me up and down, and she stared and walked away, as if I wasn't a female veteran because I didn't fit her profile of what a female veteran looked like. And she just assumed I was his spouse, which I am, but I am a woman veteran, and she should have asked me, and she didn't. And I still to this day come across people, like I was at Home Depot, last year? It was last year. And I said, can I get a veteran discount? And the lady's like, right, you're a veteran. And I'm like, yes, I am. And she's like, really? And so even today, it's a struggle for women veterans, even today, to be taken legitly and real. And my whole thing to women veterans out there that are listening or will see this is, never be ashamed of your service, your time in service, because no matter what job you did or it was important. It's always every single, I don't care if you were a cook, I don't care if you were supply, you could have been anything. It's so important, just that you served. And you're a woman veteran, please embrace that and, and educate people.
Thank you, Celestina. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that, Dan?
No, and I just think it's important to share our stories. Like my story, the one that I would share is people don't realize this, that I was not born in this country. I was a immigrant here. For the longest time, I was illegal, right? I'm not a, during the Reagan years, I received amnesty and got a green card. And I joined the military after I got out of high school, and was offered, while I was in the Navy, was offered to go to a program for officers. I think it was called the Boost program, and I could not qualify because I was not a citizen of the United States. And that's what led me on my path to become a citizen. For all the warts that this country has, this is one of the best countries in the world. I couldn't ask for any place better to go to. Like I said, I was not a citizen, became a citizen, and joined the military. Now I'm out working and helping other veterans. And I just want people to realize that people's backstories, right? I mean, what they had to overcome to get where they're at. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Dan. We appreciate all of your services. Troy, we're coming up on you. I think you're our last individual. We literally have 6 minutes left, and I don't want to leave you out. So if you could share with us also.
Absolutely. I actually believe everybody has a story. That's something I've always thought about, and I really appreciate, Celestina, your story and sharing that with us. I think that a lot of women veterans are not recognized as much as the male veterans are, and they may be at some colleges on the college level, because we see some women veterans come in and we treat them just the same as every veteran. But I think outside of the college level, the recognition isn't there as much. For me, my story, a lot of us, we don't like to share our stories. We don't like to talk about our past, or don't like to talk about things coming up. The only thing I could say is really start small. I mean, if you're having a hard time with it, just start small. We've done this in the past at some of our events, where people would say, drop off a postcard and write something funny that happened in the military while you were in. And we would read those out and we'd think, that was great. Yeah, that happened to me too. And then that would spark a conversation between veterans and build that camaraderie and build that peer support. Write something frustrating that happened to you in the military, and we'd talk about that. So I think really just starting small was really, really good. Getting plugged into different places. When I first got out, I didn't want to talk at all. I ended up going to the vet center after several years and utilizing one of the counselors there. It was not a part of the VA at the time. It was just a vet center where the counselor there was just going to sit down and talk to you and help you through some stuff. He recommended going to groups, and I sat down with the groups, and it was a great experience. It was a really good experience to say, you know, things like, I'm just having a hard time with crowds. And then other people would say, yeah, me too. This is what I do. And we just bounce ideas back and forth. So really just getting plugged in with the community of veterans that you have around you. We all may not have the same background or the same experiences, you know, or yeah, just really just, I think just being plugged in is important because you could build each other up. You could share that camaraderie, and you could find ways to better approach different situations from that point on.
Thank you, Troy. Well, I appreciate every single one of you individuals that were speaking with us here this evening. I know it took a little bit of courage to be able to tell some of your stories and be able to share that. And as a fellow veteran, I thank you for that. And I understand with even like with my radio program, how important it is, even though there's times when we talk on the radio that I'll come to tears or break up on the radio because just everything floods back. And so once again, you've been watching the American Veteran Scenario. This podcast will be available tomorrow, and it'll be on the PBS website. We want to encourage you to go back and watch the Veterans American Veterans Program. The series 4 just came out last night. And so that's available now. You can go to American Veteran PBS to share your story. If you're a veteran, you're listening, we encourage you to go share your story, even though you're not talking to us personally. We want you to be able to get that information out. Sometimes just talking or writing in a certain area where you know it's going to be appreciated, you're not going to lose. Nobody's going to criticize you. In fact, we want you to help tell your story. We want to be part of your healing process. So, Celestina, please give us the office number for the Veteran Service Office for Shasta County.
Yes, our office number is 530-225-5616, and we're at 1855 Shasta Street in Reading.
One more time on the phone number.
530-225-5616.
Thank you. James, can you give us the number for Shasta College?
Be happy to. The phone number is for Veteran Services. It's at 530-242-7597.
One more time.
530-242-7597.
That's for Shasta College. And then for Butte, can you go ahead and give us your phone number too, twice? Butte College?
The number here for Veteran Services at Butte College is area code 530-895-2566.
One more time.
530-895-2566.
And Troy, can you give it to us for Simpson University? Oh, I'm sorry, Andrew. Apologize.
No worries. So for my direct line, it's 530-226-4140. Again, that's 530-226-4140.
And if you're looking for information from the Northern California Veterans Museum or from Homeward Bound Military Family Support Services, our office number is 530-378-2280. 530-378-2280. In each one of these organizations, you can go and you can look them up on, some of you have Facebook pages, but all of you have emails. They can look you up on Google search. They'll be able to find that information. Look for the Veteran Service Office, the Veteran Service Capability. And we are here to serve you. And we have open arms. We're ready to listen. We're ready to encourage you. And we're ready for you to take the next step in your life, be educated, to move on, whatever it's going to take, so that you can be a better citizen here in our community after serving our country, and also to work with your family to help your family be better in our community also. Once again, this has been the American Veteran Zoom podcast. And I want to thank all of you once again for the opportunity for us to be here and for you to be personal and share your stories. Thank you. Good night.
Night.
It's Rob Burroughs signing off.